The background to this webinar is that recent health and safety legislation changes in Australia and indeed in New Zealand mean that corporations must take a far more active approach to managing the risks associated with corporate travel or risk criminal prosecution. To cover the topic today and to give us a guidance, we have Alana Titterton and Tony Ridley.
So when it comes to the processes and the application of health and safety, again, a lot of organisations or individuals are under the impression that it's insurable. Well, I've got travel insurance, I've got errors and omissions and professional indemnity and a whole bunch of insurances, but the act of negligence or the failure to comply or provide said services is not insurable. And this is where a lot of organisations or individuals, again, are not discovering this until well after the fact. And there's a slow-moving awareness even within the travel insurance space where organisations are realising that some of the things that they've compensated or paid for insurance, it was actually a breach of both the act and the processes and something that was both avoidable or negligent on both the provider and or the individual's end. The occupational security, and you hear a lot of references to travel security, but when it comes to security as a legislation and certainly occupational security, it's very, very poorly developed. And it's not a universal process, and most recently for those in Australia, you're aware of the changing in the alert statuses and how terrorism is being addressed, but health and safety is the bigger and far more prescriptive process. So occupational security really doesn't apply 9 times out of 10 for many of the health and safety systems or processes that should be provided. Now, security risk management, there is only one international standard, but remembering that international standards are more of a collective opinion rather than legal legislation that says they need to be complied with, but you need to be able to demonstrate some kind of system, and if you're ignoring the internationally accepted system, then you certainly need to be able to demonstrate a superior or more consistent one in terms of how you apply. And again, it's an all or nothing process. You can't simply selectively say that you've chosen one or two of those elements. But security, however, and that's both physical and mental security, is also a consideration within the safety risk paradigm. So this means as part of your hazard identification, there are physical and life safety security elements that need to be considered, but it does not dominate the process. And the act of reasonably practicable, again, is something that needs to be demonstratable. It needs to be something that there's a methodology, there's documentation, there's consistent application, and it's got context. It certainly is not, and you'll see Smart Traveller, the DFAT advisory, has come out recently to advise a lot of businesses to tell them that they do have this obligation and liability, but it's not a case of having a lucky dip where you simply put your hand into a barrel and select 1 or 2 or 5 variants of low, medium or high and simply assign that to a country or a traveller. That's not risk management. If I was to do that in the normal physical workplace, you would laugh at me, and certainly the law would punish you for those sorts of practices, in the sense that I've arrived at a workplace and it's a big facility and we've got lots of dangerous machinery and lots of different levels of experience and inductions have taken place, but I've simply chosen for convenience to give you one card that says, well, generally everything in here is kind of medium risk and these are the sorts of things that you need to do, and I'm not providing you any inductions, I'm not contextualizing it for you, and you're free to your own volition to wander around and use whatever machinery you would like. Now that's a laughable set of circumstances. However, if you're applying or not fundamentally applying the processes required under both the law and the international standards, then that's exactly what you're doing. So when it comes to the hierarchy of controls, and Eleanor spoke about this before, personal protective equipment, putting safety glasses and a hat and steel cap boots and so on, is one of the last control measures. Engineering, substitution, policies, all those sorts of things in terms of the selective element, again, you have to demonstrate how you came to choose those particular control measures after you have identified the hazard, the likelihood, the consequence, the impacts, all those sorts of things, again, is a fundamental process that you simply can't jump to a prescriptive to say, well, everybody wears safety glasses and boots and that's what we're going to do, and we've skipped all of the other processes. And in particular, when it comes to process, it should be focused on the risk and not the injury or the illness. Too many applications where people have started this, they've been focusing on the outcome or the illness and they haven't looked at the risk of the subsequent hazards, which again is basically a flaw in their process.